Welcome to the IDRPP's Time to Act Mental Health Echo. My name is Tori Coons, and I am project support for Project Echo. I have the privilege to introduce our housekeeping slides before we hear from our presenter. Let's see if that's actually going to click for me. Apparently not. There we go. Sorry for the delay. We record our echo sessions for educational and quality improvement purposes. By participating in this session, you consent to being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, feel free to disconnect from the session. Echo is an interactive community. To help support that, we ask our participants to be engaged in asking questions after our didactic speaker and to provide feedback or ideas during our case presentation or discussion. As our discussions often surround our experiences with kids and families, please protect these individuals' privacy. We ask that you avoid using identifying information such as their name, as well as the names of family members, friends, or coworkers. If you have any questions as to what would be considered identifying information, please reach out to a hub member. All of our hub members will have asterisks before their names or will shortly. During each of our echo sessions, we have a subject matter expert or didactic speaker, a case presentation or discussion, and professional networking. For this session, we ask that you rename your profile to your first and last name, state, job title, and organization. To rename your profile, click on the participants icon in the bottom menu of the Zoom window, your profile, and then rename your profile in the dialog box. Today, if questions come up during our presentation, we will ask that you put them in the chat and we will try and get to them as they apply and as we can pause the presentation. So we will probably not be using the raise hand feature during the presentation, but if you want to use it during our discussion later on in the session, you can hover your mouse on the Zoom window to locate the menu, select participants, and then the raise hand option at the bottom. In our echo sessions, we ask our participants to respect the presenter by using the chat or raise hand feature to ask questions or contribute. Keep questions brief and on topic, and then introduce yourself and your organization before asking a question. If at all possible, and if you're willing, we would love to have you turn on your camera during sessions as it helps with connection, building community, and making networking more meaningful. By attending this session, you can earn professional development credits. To do so, please fill out the survey Janelle will be dropping in the chat throughout this session. Canvas is where we store the information to prepare for, review, and implement the strategies discussed in our echo sessions. If you would like to access Canvas, email timetoact@aggies.usu.edu, and we will send you instructions for how to register. Case studies are where we share information about real-life situations, hear from colleagues about recommendations, receive valuable feedback to take and apply. So if you're interested in presenting a case for us, which we love to have you guys present, feel free to reach out to timetoact@aggies.usu.edu. To stay connected with everything Project Echo, follow our Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Without any further ado, I would like to turn the time over to our presenter today, who is Mary Beth Vogel-Ferguson, and she's going to talk to us about trauma-informed approaches for system change.
Thanks so much, Tori. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can share my screen. After practicing, it's always nice to see if it works. Did it work?
It did.
Are we up? All right. Thank you so much. Then let's see. Okay. Oh, perfect. Okay, great. Thank you so much again, Tori, for the introduction and for the opportunity to come and share some time with you. In July, when Janelle first asked me to participate in this series, little did I know how relevant this topic could be. For many of us in our workplaces, they've become a little bit unstable, I think, with financial losses, staff shortages. There's a lot of other unknowns out there. Given our busy schedules, I'm guessing you might have been running a little bit to get here on time. So I don't know about you, but I could use a moment just to get settled. Anyone else? I'm going to invite us just to take a couple of deep breaths together and get started. So deep breath in and out. Breath in and out. Last one in and out. Okay, that's better. I was really excited to see in the chat names of and locations of people from lots of different places around the country, as well as in Utah. My name, as she said, is Mary Beth. I'm from an organization called Trauma Informed Utah, and we work with organizations to create a more supportive, trauma-informed work climate and culture to support everyone in the agency or the organization to remain in what can really be sometimes hard work. Hopefully you have the handout that I sent. I think there's a link being put in the chat, and we'll be going through that material today. As we go along, I'll be inviting you to put things in the chat, but feel free anytime to put in comments or questions, and we'll follow along. So let's go ahead and jump in. So many of us are part of systems, workplaces where we share time and talents with both our clients, but also other members of the organization. You know, unless you're working totally independently, most of us will spend about a third or more of our adult lives working in some kind of a system, a business, organization, agency. And wouldn't it be great if we and everyone around us could go through each day with that energized, positive attitude, like able to take on the world? And while I know we're all dedicated professionals, sometimes we can experience stressful challenges in that workplace. Things just seem to keep coming at us day after day after day after day. It can be a lot. And we know that stress responses are really, really normal reactions to things going on in the world around us. But sometimes I think we can find ourselves working really hard not to show how things are affecting us. Have you ever walked into a meeting and seen this expression on the face of the leader? My first thought is always like, oh no, what happened? And I hope it's not about me. And at least some people seem like they can just own it, but they really have no idea how loudly and maybe unintentionally they're communicating that they're on the edge of imploding. Or maybe it looks like they're more on the edge of exploding. And you might gently ask a colleague, how are you doing today? And they respond, I'm fine. Well, maybe it hasn't always been this way. Think back to the favorite job you ever had. What was it like? What made it so great for you? So here I am, many moons ago, at one of my favorite jobs. I know I can hear you laughing. Why did I like it? Well, it's not that it was an easy job. We were tested on getting the order on the tray and ready to go out the door before the person started paying. But let's face it, the stakes weren't very high, right? The greatest problem I could face was maybe forgetting to put on extra pickles. When I left work, I left it. There were no more taking home sad stories or big problems, right? I could just leave work at work. Think back to when you were a new worker, excited to start your job. Maybe you even thought, wow, I love helping people. This is a dream. I can't believe they even pay me to do this work. You know, that fresh energy in an organization is great. If only it could last. Just 6 months in, things might have changed. You come in on Monday all ready to go for the week. Tuesday, well, things didn't work out so well, so we're going to start again. By Wednesday, it's like, whoa, what is happening? And by Thursday, it's like, isn't it Friday yet? And by Friday, I just want to go home. And you wonder, what happened? It can begin to feel like we're drowning with no hope of return. And there's actually a reason for this. All workplaces have stress, right? That can come from a lot of different sources, even Wendy's. In your handout, my guess is that you could fill in the box next to this image with lots and lots of things that cause stress in anybody's workplace. There's deadlines, miscommunication, a lot of different kinds of challenges. And that can all lead to burnout, emotional exhaustion, being overwhelmed, and maybe kind of a less feeling of personal accomplishment. All these things can happen when the levels of stress have gone just too far. Because, stress in and of itself really isn't bad. Actually, stress can come in a lot of different levels. And it can be great to have like downtime. When there's no stress, you feel totally relaxed. But sometimes that level of relaxation and inactivity can actually lead to boredom. When it comes and start moving to the yellow zone, we can actually experience the stress as good. Just a little stress can lead us to feeling energized and engaged, excited, activated. But as the stress level increases, the positive benefits start to be outweighed by the negative. When it reaches that moderate level, we can begin to feel frenzied or fatigued. And when it gets too high, that burnout or the breakdown mentally or even physically can begin to happen. In this stress curve, we can see how the level of stress has a direct impact on the quality of our actions and our job performance. And for many of us, our work environment adds another element that makes it even more likely to push us into that red zone. And that can happen when the traditional workplace stress has the added component of being trauma exposed. When we work in an environment where we're exposed to other people's stories of adversity and even trauma, it can make the work even more stressful, and that can take a toll on our physical and mental well-being, no matter how much we love our work and no matter how much we care about the people that we serve. So why is it important to understand the impact of this added layer of stress on us in the work we do? Unaddressed stress has been identified as one of the main contributing factors to turnover in organizations. But it's a common occupational hazard of working in the human services field, right? Stress needs to be recognized and treated as a potential occupational hazard, not something that reflects on the skills or the resilience of the employee. Oh, she's so strong. She can handle anything. Not really. The very traits that draw us into the helping field and make us excellent employees, for example, having empathy, they also place us at higher risk for high levels of stress. I really believe this saying. The expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet. Really powerful. We're going to have hard times in the work. It will impact us. We will all get wet. So what are some of the things that make us more likely to be impacted by this work? Here are some of the risk factors that are related to this type of workplace stress. Things like having high caseloads. Can anyone relate to that? Maybe not having a lot of training for the role that I'm in, or moving into a role of authority long before I feel ready. Maybe we bring our own history of adversity. Maybe we feel isolated. Oftentimes during the pandemic, people talked about the inability to share what was going on with their colleagues, or maybe we're working in confidential situations where we just can't talk about what we see or experience to other people. Maybe we have high levels of stress going on in our lives outside of work. All these things can create more workplace stress. And nearly every part of our life can be impacted, from thinking to work to social functioning. I feel safe saying that many of us are likely experiencing some pretty significant levels of stress, even if it's the good kind, like with the holidays coming up. Maybe it's all not from our workplaces, but from other parts of life as well. What are behaviors or feelings that communicate to you that you're experiencing high levels of stress? Maybe it's in your neck or shoulders. Maybe in the way that you find yourself talking to, or maybe talking at other people. Sometimes I wake up in the morning with a knot in my stomach. And I think like, oh, I wonder what's going on. Why am I feeling like this? Oh, then I remember that I have to do a workshop in a few hours, and then I know why. What about you? How do you recognize that stress in your body? Those are things that we want to pay attention to in our work. The things that create stress in our workplace can look different for each of us. Our unique experiences, personal situation, and coping skills help us define how we experience our workplace. So I'm going to invite you to take a minute to write down what are some of the areas that create challenging levels of stress for you in your workplace. You have this graphic in your handout on page 4, or just use a scrap of paper or whatever you want. So I mean, literally, I'm going to give you 1 minute. I'll time it and invite you just to write down what are 5 things that you experience that cause you to experience stress. Okay, go. Okay, as you finish that up, I would invite you, if you feel comfortable, to add any of your thoughts to the chat. What are some experiences or things from your workplace that can cause challenging levels of stress? Ooh, tight deadlines, yes. Unexpected turnover, absolutely. Lack of communication, leadership changes, oh, canceled appointments that are difficult to reschedule, attitudes, migraines, yuck. Not feeling prepared, oh yeah, for sure. Lack of resources for families, yeah, you want to be able to help and you don't feel like you can. Unclear expectations, not enough personnel to do jobs, parents' complaints, meeting a lot of new people, constantly low pay. Oh, yes. Stacked up duties, gossip, micromanaging, absolutely. Inconsistencies, all of those. Thank you. Not feeling adequate, absolutely. Who likes to feel that way? I don't know about you, but you might notice that even just reflecting on stressful experiences can create a physical reaction in your breathing, maybe your heart rate going up. Great, lots of powerful examples there. Thank you. We're going to take a step back from this now and think a little bit about our workplaces, right? Some of those places where we experience these higher levels of stress and what that experience is like. While we're all responsible really for incorporating self-care practices into our own lives, trying to work and navigate all of these things that you've added to the chat here, all of these experiences of stress, we want to also recognize that we're not the only ones who can and maybe should carry the responsibility of providing a work environment that supports worker well-being, that supports us in our jobs. We're not the only ones who should be making an effort not to add unnecessarily to the challenges we already experience in doing this work. So luckily, more than 10 years ago, SAMHSA came up with this definition of a trauma-informed approach that can, and I would say maybe should, be incorporated into any workplace. And particularly workplaces where the likelihood of experiencing traumatic stress is higher. It says, a trauma-informed approach is a strengths-based service delivery approach that is grounded in an understanding of and responsiveness to the impact of trauma that emphasizes physical, psychological, and emotional safety for both providers and clients. We often think about how our work setting impacts the clients, but this perspective on the workplace needs to really also extend to staff as well. So how do we do that? This SAMHSA framework for incorporating a trauma-informed approach in the workplace is found in these 6 key principles. These principles are designed to build up and restore what can be taken away by experiences of adversity, and these principles can really apply to everyone. So, safety. Physical safety is something we often think about. How do I feel physically safe in my environment? But also psychological safety, my mental well-being, or social safety. How do we as a unit, as a group, interact in safe ways? Or even moral safety. Do I feel safe in being able to point out things that maybe aren't popular or what's not going well in an organization? Trust and transparency can be experienced when organizational operations and decisions are done in a way that is transparent with the goal of building and maintaining trust. Peer support is important in creating that community workplace and really can be built into our regular operations of our organization, not just something that we do when there's a big crisis or a big event. Collaboration and mutuality is really a practice of recognizing the value and contributions of each person. This includes a meaningful sharing in planning and in decision-making in the organization. Empowerment, voice, and choice involves always looking for opportunities to give choice so individuals can have self-determination. And it often involves including the voice of those who will be impacted by decisions. And finally, cultural, historical, and gender issues. The organization actively moves past cultural stereotypes and biases and offers culturally responsive services, really appreciates the healing value of traditional cultural connections and recognizes and addresses historical trauma. You know, these principles are things we often think about as applying primarily just to like interpersonal relationships. And the principles certainly apply in that venue. But in your reflection, you might have found that some of your stressors can come from a lot of different parts of the organization. SAMHSA also recognizes this and has suggested that trauma-informed approaches can be incorporated into every part of the organization. They've actually identified 10 specific implementation domains from leadership through evaluation. So let's take a look at these 10 domains and how trauma-informed approaches can be incorporated across the organization. While I go through these domains, I'd like to invite you to think about your organization. And while the principles apply, as we said, both to you and the clients you serve, for now, I'd just like you to think about how you feel each area works to support you, or maybe not support you, in your work. As we go through each area, if you think of ways your organization shines in a particular area, write it down. Write it down, and then we'll be sharing ideas in the chat. We love to share ideas with each other, so we can learn from best practices from each person. So let's start with governance and leadership. The leadership of an organization really sets the tone, right? Names expectations and is key to how a trauma-informed lens is used to set a course in all areas of the organization. Like it says, leadership and governance give attention to staff needs in all areas of well-being and is guided by the 6 key principles. Think about how some of the aspects of your well-being at work are influenced by the decisions of leadership. So I was thinking about even some of the things that went in the chat, right? Micromanagement versus having autonomy and freedom in your work. Peer support. Is there permission for us to engage with each other? Do we experience supervision that promotes safety, transparency, and trust? I always like to think about the idea of if I've done something, if I've screwed up in some way, and I go to my supervisor and are upfront and tell them what I've screwed up, and the response is, how could you do that? You've been trained on that. What were you thinking? What's wrong with you? How likely am I to go back next time and be honest about something that I screwed up on? Probably not much at all. But if the response that I get from my supervisor is something like, oh my gosh, no, that is not cool. We can't have that happen. Let's talk about what training you might need. Let's talk through the situation and brainstorm ways you could have dealt with it differently. If I find leadership as supportive in my growth in the process, I'm much more likely to trust and feel safe in those relationships. So using language that's respectful and inclusive, open communication that's shared across the organization, not just people in upper management, openness and seeking feedback. When I ask my opinion, that leadership really wants to know that, because we all know leadership is really key in an organization. In fact, when we work with organizations, if leadership is not on board with implementing this process, we're likely to say this is going to be helpful for your organization, because the last thing you want to do is train the front line in trauma-informed approaches so that they do well with their clients, but then have them turn around to the organization and continue to get traumatized by the leadership from within. So leadership is huge and important. We also think about policy. Think about some of the policies within your organization and how they might or might not incorporate those 6 key principles. Organizational policies set boundaries and frame the expectations that surround all of our organizational practices. The written policies and procedures of the organization can really serve to ensure that the trauma-informed approach gets more than just lip service, right? We say we're trauma-informed, but when we look at our policies, and with that the principles can get embedded into the culture, into the way we do business. It's not something, it's an add-on that we just think about, but it's part of who we are. So thinking about things like HR policies that are flexible and allow for individual differences. Maybe it's differences that need to be accommodated because of kids or because of my religious practices. Those different pieces, flexibility in those areas. Providing trauma-informed approach training to new hires, making that part of the standard expectation when people are hired. Including the voice of staff and clients when policies are decided. Or doing training around experiences of different diverse groups who might be accessing our services. Protocols around confidentiality, even approving the use of staff wellness plans. All of these things can be written into policy and can reflect those principles. Thinking about our physical environment. What about the physical environment impacts your well-being for better or for worse? For example, when we think about our physical environment, it means thinking about all levels of ability and mobility. How can people move around physically in our space? All different sexual orientations and genders, all racial groups and backgrounds, religious organizations, religious backgrounds, socioeconomic class. Maybe some of the items on your list of workplace challenges or stressors could be included here. How does the physical environment impact your work? Private spaces versus cubicles, all of these pieces, and the experiences of others in the space. Sometimes I think about when I walk into a building, what's on the walls? Does it reflect the clientele who are part of that? Or is there such chaos in the welcoming space that if a client comes in really dysregulated, what's going to be their experience just walking into our space? They actually have a profession now that talks about trauma-informed architecture. So we're moving into that mindset in all kinds of different ways. Then thinking about finances. Ugh. Finances are a huge driver in any organization, right? Particularly now. Knowing what finances are always limited, and if yours aren't, get in touch with me because I've got some ideas on how we could spend your money. But most of the time, finances are limited. It can be hard to imagine supporting trauma-informed efforts. But if we think about the cost of losing staff, needing to hire and retrain new staff, it becomes much more apparent how important these ideas are. So what does an investment in trauma-informed approaches look like? Well, for example, I'm guessing that maybe some of you are being paid by your agency to actually participate in this webinar. That's a clear investment in commitment to trauma-informed approaches. Other aspects might include supporting time to do actual peer support, or maybe creating safer facilities, employee wellness activities, or regular wage increases as possible. There might also be financial policies that impact staff time and client requirements. Trauma-informed approaches to finances can certainly impact staff well-being. Perhaps some of the items you identified, again, could be tied to your organization's decisions about finances. I think I did see low pay be something that's circulated through, right? That can cause a lot of stress in an organization. Two more implementation domains are engagement and involvement and evaluation. Think back again to those 6 key principles of empowerment, voice, and choice. Most organizations where we work have traditional hierarchical structures for decision making, right? The trauma-informed organizations really try to look for opportunities to flatten that out and provide opportunities for input from staff and clients. And this can happen in a lot of different areas. This type of inclusion really honors the variety of perspectives people on staff bring. People bring different genders, different cultures, different spiritualities, or political views. Well, obviously, no one of us will have everything just the way we want in an organization, but being part of the process and having our views being asked about, sincerely listened to, and then respected really supports our well-being in the workspace. Having a voice creates investment and ownership. So all kinds of opportunities to give that perspective and to have it valued are really important. And finally, the remaining 4 implementation domains are listed here. Most of these are really more focused on work with clients and outward facing into the community. And while that's true, these part of our work can still impact our personal well-being by helping build supportive communities outside of the workplace. They can end up leading to a greater client success, which fuels our sense of accomplishment and job satisfaction. One of the stressors that I saw go by was not having access to resources to help children and families when you needed to. So if we have great cross-sector collaboration and we know where we can find resources and help support families and children, that's going to help us in our job satisfaction as well. Think about your own well-being at work is impacted by the experiences, outcomes of those you serve, right? For example, when our screening and assessment processes are open and transparent, ensuring clients have informed consent and knowing how their information is going to be used, they're more likely to share more about their situation. I've found that especially true these days. A lot of our clients, especially folks that come from backgrounds that might be targeted these days, they can really be reticent in sharing information because they're scared. And if we're transparent about who has access to information, how it can be used, they're more likely to feel safe with us and be able to share the information, which will actually help us do better case management and create better treatment plans. It helps us feel more successful in our work when we've really been able to connect with that client. So when we have strong cross-sector collaboration, we feel more confident making referrals, clients get the services they need, and we know that we're not alone in this work. These are just a few examples of how we can make these principles work. The goal then is for organizations to recognize and implement ways that the 6 key principles are expressed in all 10 of these domains. So it's really the crosswalk. This crosswalk builds an environment where staff well-being can be considered in all parts of the work experience. And the data is really clear that when staff experience an organization as supportive and what we would call trauma-informed, worker retention rates are higher, there's greater staff satisfaction, and overall outcomes for our clients actually improve. With all of this information in mind, I'm going to invite you to identify things from your organization, things that they're doing to implement the 6 key principles, things that are maybe already happening that you feel like they should continue, ideas on what might be some good next steps to get started. And you might have already identified some things that you feel really are not working and really should stop. So for example, you might recognize that your organization prioritized safety when they added better lighting to your parking lot or created secure doors and limited access. Or you might feel like your cultural or religious practices are honored because your organization has a policy that allows you to switch your work schedule to engage in religious practices. Or maybe your organization made a financial commitment to turning a small office space where staff can go after a particularly hard situation and get recentered before having to continue through the day. These are ways workplaces can create a healthy working environment. The truth is, no one is likely to force us to take time out after something hard happens. But if our organizations can take steps to provide these resources, it creates a culture that says it's okay to take a minute for yourself when these kinds of things happen. So you have a handout in your packet. If you can't find it, you can just look at the screen. I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes to reflect for yourself. What is your organization doing now that you would consider trauma-informed? The 6 key principles you'll see again on the side, on the left-hand side of the diagram. The 10 domains are across the top. What things have come to mind that you would think about is going on currently? What things might you identify that you think could be started? And maybe what would you like to see stopped? I'm going to time us again, 2 minutes on your own to reflect and write. So we'll just take a pause right there for reflection and then come back together. Ready, go. Okay, wrap up your thoughts. as I said, we really love to learn from each other. You are all generous in sharing a lot of your challenges of things that create stress in your organizations. But we'd love to start off by identifying and naming some of the things that you recognize in your organization is currently doing that you would like to see continued, things that create that support for you. Go ahead and add into the chat any of the things that you put in the continue that you can share out with the rest of us. Maybe some of them will be responsive to some of the stress factors that we already saw. Annual staff survey with follow-up. I love it. Actually follow up on that. That's great. Too many times we do surveys and never share back what happens, and nothing ever happens. That's so frustrating. Glad to see that. Peer support by having staff meetings regularly and building good relationships. So nice for so many people coming back after COVID to be able to do that. Have a health and wellness group, actually being attentive to that. When there's a group within the organization that's supported by leadership, that gives us permission to do those things. Safety committee. Oh, that'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see how that is defined. Safety in what areas or in all areas. Yearly self-care summit. Oh, wonderful. Hopefully that's sounds like it's more than bubble baths and take a vacation, right? But really good quality self-care. Hybrid work options. That's still so important for so many people. Giving those options. And I like that word options because then that can be choice. Other things people see that they want to continue. My organization is very supportive in all of these areas. Monthly collaboration and access to support in many areas has someone to go to having someone to go to at all times. Just that sense of backup that I'm not alone in this. Anything else that you can identify that you're already doing? Sorry. It's okay, Stacy. You're good. You're good. Individualized professional development plans. Wow, that says so much when an organization is as invested in us as they want us to be in them, right? That creating that mutuality, collaborative working together. Ethics and DEI committee, open to anonymous input and support. So many of these loaded concepts can feel unsafe for people, to be honest, and to create opportunities for anonymity, as well as opportunities to be able to just speak out, can really support someone that has something to say to, but just doesn't quite feel safe enough doing it in person. This is great. Okay, so many great ideas here. I'm wondering if anybody came up or from some of the ideas you saw or things you've been thinking about, what could you imagine your organization starting that would be, as an organization, able to support you as a staff in more trauma-informed ways? Ideas of things that you'd like to start. Sometimes when we're having these conversations, people that haven't thought about having regular peer support groups available is something that people can get ideas about. Just a space to be able to get together with colleagues and talk through hard times. So we're not just all on our own independently doing that. The annual staff survey sounds amazing, or another way to provide feedback to anonymously to leadership. Anonymously leadership, yep, that's great. So important, and someone loved that. Yeah, yeah. just getting people's ideas and opinions. Therapy for work that is heavy. Yes. That can come on all different levels. For some people, having peer support just to talk through some of those heavy things is important. But for others, having access to maybe an employee assistance program or someplace where you can actually access therapy around those issues can be really important. Periodically looking at procedures to look for things that we might be doing that are adding to workload without clear benefit to staff and families. That's great. And that's something that definitely could be written into policy so that we're always monitoring. One of the 10 domains is progress monitoring and quality assurance. How do we keep looking at what we're doing so we're not just doing things because that's the way that it's always been done, but we're always being able to review and get some more ideas. Anything else to add? Some of you may have come up with some ideas on things that you looked at and say, oh, we need to stop doing this. And I won't call you out on it, but it's good to look at things. Lights in the parking lot for late sessions. Amen. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that can seem like such a simple thing, but so many times our organizations are focused outward towards the clients and we're very conscious of what we do for them. But something as simple as lights in the parking lot for late night sessions, actually that would be good for both clients and staff, right? But just to be conscious of what that feels like, and we don't need one more stressor. And if we can do something like that, that's both a physical environment improvement and it requires finance to be dedicated to that process. So okay, well, thank you. I hope you had a lot of other things in your chart there. And again, there may be some ideas of things you want to stop, just recognizing that they're not helpful. And those are things to pay attention to too. Ultimately, even the smallest actions are steps in the right direction. So we're not looking at needing to change the world in everything we're doing, but really being attentive to the little things that we can do that make a big difference. We're people helping people. Our daily interactions with kids and families and peers and ourselves is what really makes a difference in this world. And we can't do everything at once. Intentional actions, small steps, both on our part and the part of the organization, is what we need to really be able to make a difference. This is how we create lasting change for ourselves and for people that we serve. So, thank you. This is the end of the formal presentation part, but I would love to be able to open up to questions and comments. I will suggest ask from the leader, should I go ahead and stop sharing so we can take an opportunity for that?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, super. Any thoughts or questions? Insights? All clear as mud. I love it.
Leo, it
Well,
looked like you came off mute. Go ahead.
well, let's say you are like an employee and you have this great idea to implement something that's trauma informed within your company. What would you say? How would you go about even asking management to do something like that without fear of retaliation or somebody retaliating back against you? And does that even in your work? I mean, yeah, just like how to avoid that.
Well, it's unavoidable. I'll put it that way to start with. So I think the biggest challenge, and this is something that very often happens for us, we have folks that come to us and say, we need to be more trauma informed as an organization. Come and help us. And they're often from middle management or from like the social work department. Really, the biggest challenge is helping leadership understand the value of implementing these kinds of principles. So the SAMHSA document that I referenced is a really great resource because it outlines what are the benefits, the long-term benefits of implementing these kinds of principles. So there's both the specific idea, but thinking about how is that going to make it better for staff? How will they be able to function better? How will they be able to do their job better? In many organizations, thinking about the cost benefit analysis is really important, right? How is this going to save us? How is this going to help us do what we do better and save us money? Thinking about those things as part of an idea are great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mary Beth, is there a
Go ahead.
question? Sorry.
No, go Tori, go ahead.
No, I was gonna add a comment. So if you have a question, I think we should continue on with it.
Yeah, just a question. Thanks so much, Tori. Mary Beth, this was awesome, and you cannot even believe how timely it was, because I think, so I guess my question is, I just had a meeting with a staff member here yesterday and just maintaining confidentiality, but that I think is really struggling with massive compassion fatigue, right? And just kind of vicarious traumatization. And based on that, is kind of struggling with an error that was made in the workflow, right? So like, I just wondered, in addition to obviously everything you said about like how we as supervisors can approach that and what we can do to support that individual, I didn't know if there was like best practice standards or like even if you have recommendations, just given what you guys know in Utah of trauma informed, we have an EAP here, but like, are there folks that in the community that we could recommend that are great at working with folks who are dealing with, kind of trauma based on the client population we serve, the population we serve. So I just am wanting to kind of help get her connected to some really supportive mental health therapy, because she's just feeling incredibly guilty about the mistake that she made and how it might impact the client. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Thanks, Emmy. That's a great question. I'm not going to list people off the top of my head because I think referrals for those kinds of things are very specific to situations and capacities. So I'm happy to touch base offline with you. The thing that I'll add, though, is that oftentimes people can think about trauma-informed approaches as being about just letting people off the hook, having no accountability, just like anything goes. And that's actually the farthest thing from the truth, because just like think about it like with teenagers. If you just let teenagers have no boundaries, oh, I'm just going to be a free parent, anything goes, like that's not helpful to them. They need to know where the edges are, know what the boundaries are, know what the expectations are. I think that as an organization, though, oftentimes we make assumptions about what people know or what onboarding needs to happen. And we think that, one day with a peer, walk around and meet everyone and they're set. No, the investment on that onboarding up front, knowing expectations, knowing what the organization does, sets them up for success in a better way long term. So it's actually about more accountability. But it's accountability that's mutual. It's not just on the person, but it's on us as well. How well did we do our training? How much information? How many resources do they have? All of those kinds of things are really built into that trauma-informed approach so that there's success on both sides. So thanks for the question, Emmy.
Sure thing. Thank you. And yeah, I'll reach out offline.
Yep, thanks.
Do we have any more questions? Either in the chat or coming off mute. Are you raising your hand?
I am raising my hand.
Perfect.
Mary Beth, great job. Thank you for that. Question for you. I mean, this has been a great training. It's a quick shot. Are there resources either somewhere hidden in your presentation that I didn't see, or that you could share with us as far as both from the supervisory as well as from the employee standpoint? Because it is a
Oops, she went on mute.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, I mean, I was an employee for 20 years. I've been a supervisor now for about 5. So I've seen both sides of it where it's difficult on both sides, right? As an employee to sit there and go, why aren't we getting cost of living increases? Why are we being worked so hard? Why are all these things that we can't understand? But having been on the supervisory side now, there are certain lines that you can't cross and share. Well, this and this, because then people panic and jump ship or whatever the case is, right? So there's those lines. Are there any good trainings on how to work with employees, how to work with supervisors, so employees can have the information they need, supervisors can know what needs to be done to help the employees feel validated and feel like what they're doing is worth the effort they're putting in. So I guess I'm just looking for any resources outside. It doesn't have to be a specific company, but a general area that we could go look for that kind of stuff.
Well, I will shout out a certain company, Trauma Informed Utah. That's part of what we do with organizations is we work with them. We do supervisor training, and we help leadership design assessment processes so that you can have a better sense of what really are the concerns of staff. And I think, as somebody put in the chat, just having that annual assessment, getting a feeling of where people are at is so critical, and then being responsive to it. I think all of us as staff understand we can't be privy to everything, but we feel more comfortable when there's a trusting relationship with leadership, that when we know that when leadership can share, they will share, and they share across the board. And they ask us, and they're responsive to us. So it really creates that relationship. So we're focusing on more how we're connected versus on things that keep us separate. And there are specific things that leaders can do that will help increase that sense of having voice and choice within the organization. It seems so simple, but I think I give the example sometimes, like if I have a client coming in and instead of saying, okay, here's your 2:00 appointment for next week, we say, I've got a 10:00 appointment and a 2:00 appointment. Which one works better for you? It's those little things that empower people to feel like, oh, I'm part of, I guess my time is valuable too, right? And we can do that with staff.
Yeah, I just pulled up your website. This looks like it has a lot of good information. So thank you. Thanks again for your presentation too.
Sure.
As we kind of wrap up
She
this
didn't pay me to
question,
say this. Oh, sorry, but I would just
No.
say, if your agency can go through the process we just did this year, was super valuable. We have a TIU committee, our staff is super engaged. It's a really good process. So I would suggest, again, and like I said, Mary Beth did not pay me, but the Trauma Informed Utah approach is like a really cool thing as an organization. And we're squarely in the trauma space because we work with, survivors of DV, sexual assault, trafficking and stuff. And even like knowing that, this training just kind of was so helpful to us organizationally. So just FYI, if you guys are ready to do it, it's super fun.
That is super cool. Thank you for sharing. I just want to especially thank Mary Beth for this presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I just felt like I was sitting here and like, oh my gosh, I've never even thought of this before. I'm still so young in my work experience, and I'm like, dang, like these are really important things to start thinking about, especially as we start this new year. Now's a great time to start thinking about the things that we may want to talk to people about, or goals that we want to make for ourselves when it comes to our self-care. So I think this is like was mentioned earlier, this is a great time to start talking about this, to start focusing on it. So now, after our presentation and our question is ended, we're going to kind of transfer into our discussion time, and we're going to talk about some of these similar things and what we can do to better involve this trauma-informed approach in our workplaces. So it looks like we're going to have 3 discussion groups. Janelle, are those going to be set up soon?
They're already set up. I'm
Perfect.
good. Yep.
I'm just going to briefly talk about the topics of the discussion groups, and then we'll transfer right on in. So in our first group, we're going to have Heather M. and Janelle as our hub members, and they're going to talk about what trauma-informed practices are already in place, and where do you see gaps or areas for improvement. In our second group, we're going to have Jeff and Leo as our hub members, and they're going to talk about what would a trauma-informed system look like, and then what policies and procedures need to change to support this vision. And then in our third group, we're going to have Stephanie and Kurt, who are going to talk about what is one actionable step you can take in the next month to move towards a trauma-informed system, and what resources or support would you help implement these changes. So then, Janelle, I think we're good to move into breakout groups. So, welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a great discussion groups and were able to come up with some more ideas and suggestions for how we can include trauma-informed approaches in our workplaces. Our first group back was Stephanie and Kurt's group. So, Stephanie, would you like to share some of the things you guys talked about?
One of these days I'm going to know where the mute button is. We had some really good comments. There were some great people in our group. So one of the things that was talked about was continuing education. So, and I loved the comments that this person made, it was so that employees know what trauma looks like from different points of view. So I thought that continuing education was really good. Another person talked about that we know that we work with a lot of hard cases, and so from the top down, that we need to make sure that we have a work-life balance. And I thought that was really good because I know that I've had times where my supervisors are saying work-life balance, but then they're working like 12, 14 hours. And so then I'm like, oh, is that the expectation? So I liked when it was like from the top down that we have that we have a work-life balance. And then another person talked about finding that her next goals were finding resources. And what was really cool is she's already accomplished that goal because people in our group were able to connect her to some different areas in her area already. So she's accomplished her goal already. So that's what we got.
That sounds amazing. I love to hear that. And those were some really good ideas, I'll be honest. So I guess our next group is going to be Heather, M, and Janelle. Who took the notes for your guys' group and would like to share with us?
I took notes. So a couple of the things that people talked about is somebody was mentioning that they've created a group that they have check-ins with other people that do the same things that she does to just debrief. The challenging part of that is that leadership doesn't necessarily pay them for their time on that. So that was a challenge of it. Somebody else talked about that they have a mental health consultant that comes in once a month to help their staff that has decreased for some of those challenging behaviors, as well as the staff just support network. And then Mary Beth was in our group, and she shared a great resource that I'll put in mine that I have to get back to the top because I was glancing through it. It's a practical guide for implementing a trauma-informed approach.
Wow. That sounds like you guys had a great conversation too. Thank you for sharing. Our last group is going to be Jeff and Leo's group. So whoever took notes, we'd love to hear from you.
So I took notes for our group, and a lot of the participants expressed how their organizations probably need some sort of training around trauma-informed care and around these kind of systems because I guess their organization, they just see a need for it in their organization. So I guess it's a really good resource. And a lot of the times they did express how you could start the conversation with upper management. Like we kind of asked a lot of where could we even start the conversation because a lot of the time when we're having, I guess, conversations about trauma, it can turn into, I guess, there's a generational component to it. I mean, the older generation a lot of the times is in charge and they have this idea to kind of pick yourself up rather compared to, I guess, the younger generation who, I guess, may be more well versed in these sort of trauma components. So I think, yeah, just in our groups, we kind of expressed, I guess, the need for a lot of trauma-informed care within organizations now.
I love that. Thank you, Leo. So it sounds like we had a lot of really great conversations and a lot of great suggestions offered. And those will be collected afterwards and put on our Canvas page. So if you'd like to be added to that Canvas page, please reach out to Time to Act at aggies.usu.edu. Just as a little reminder, well, first off, next week's Christmas, so early Merry Christmas, everybody. But our next session is going to be in the new year, in January. So that will be January 21st, and we're going to be learning about nutrition and mental health. And our presenter is going to be Jenna Dykman. I hope I said that right. If not, I apologize. I don't know that there's any other announcements. Janelle, am I missing something? Perfect. Then I guess I'm going to wish you guys a happy Christmas and a happy New Year, and then I'll see you next year. So thanks, everybody, and thank you again, Mary Beth.